Welcome to my Hemra Story channel. If you like it, you can like it and subscribe. I am a 16-year-old girl who witnessed the harsh reality of my parents' divorce. I chose to live with my mother and used past life memories and my own talents to help my mother regain her confidence and create her own parent-child clothing brand. My father tried to suppress us by various means. After a series of challenges, I finally uncovered my father's plot. My life is just beginning, and I want to create a bright future with my mother. Our story begins. 16 years old is the age when little girls dream, but I, Maddie, saw the disillusionment of a fairy tale at that time. The 5 words in the divorce settlement were like a sharp knife, cutting our once warm home in half. Mom, the woman who used to always smile so brightly, now had a pale face, holding the settlement in her hands still trembling slightly. Why did it have to turn out like this? Aaron, shouldn't our family be living happily together? Her voice was full of sobs, and she sounded very desperate. The man sitting opposite her was my father. He didn't even look up, just took a slow sip of tea and said in a cold voice, "As you know, my cosmetics business is just getting started, and I can't stay in this small city selling a few jars of cream. I want to go to a big city, seize a bigger market, make a lot of money and live the life I've always dreamed of. I also want to find a woman who can help me, not a worthless wife like you who just stays at home with the kids." Worth? Do you think my children and I are just useless accessories? She finally couldn't hold back her tears, which dripped onto the agreement and wet a corner. My father was a little impatient, frowned and pushed the agreement towards me, saying coldly, "Maddie, you're 16 years old, you're a sensible child, persuade your mother. And you'd better follow me, at least materially you'll be better off." I looked up at him, the man I once relied on so much, and now there was no warmth in his eyes, only indifference and calculation. I suddenly remembered what had happened in the past. I followed him to the big city, but what was the result? He raised me to be a brainless vase and made me a beauty blogger. No, I don't want to go with you. I shook my head hard and pushed the agreement back. I want to live with my mother. You only need to pay us alimony every month. Maddie. My father suddenly slammed the table, stared at me angrily, and said, "You are giving up the good life you have now. Your mother has been a housewife for 18 years. She has no professional skills, and she may have to become a cleaner to support you all." I sneered, pointed my finger at his nose, and said without flinching, "You can abandon your wife and daughter for your own goals, and you think I will believe that you will sincerely treat me well? Besides, the law will protect women and children. My mother and I will find a lawyer to carefully review the divorce agreement, and we will not accept less than the full amount of alimony." My father was so angry that his face turned pale, and he pointed at me but could not say a word. This time, I will take control of my own destiny. Of course, I won't fall into the same trap as last time. The first step is to read the divorce agreement carefully. In my previous life, the man who claimed to be my father transferred all his assets, leaving my mother with almost nothing. This time, I will never let him get away with it. I need to buy some time and find out how much money he has. So I suddenly had an idea. I grabbed the divorce agreement off the table and pretended to be very angry as I tore it up. This method was direct, but it worked well. At least there would be no divorce papers signed today. My mother was stunned. She didn't expect me to be so emotional. She took my hand in hers and tears started to well up in her eyes. But she tried to hold back her voice and could only nod her head, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. I felt sad when I saw her red eyes. Last time, when I pursued a life of wealth, it was my mother who had to bear all the pain and suffering alone. This time, I will never let her suffer. Aaron, you are so unpredictable. My mother took a deep breath to calm herself down. Maddie is just a child, how can you say such things? Divorce it is, I don't care. Even if I have to become a cleaner, I will take Maddie with me. My father's face turned ugly, as if he were very angry. He suddenly stood up, pointed at my mother and shouted, "Go! Get out of here now, take your daughter with you. Don't think I don't know what's going on at your parents' place. It's been bad for a long time, and you still expect them to speak up for you? I'm telling you, as long as Maddie stays with me, you won't get a single penny." I sneered inwardly. This man only knows how to threaten people with money. Does he think that'll scare us? How ridiculous. Aaron, don't go too far. My mother was shaking with anger. Maddie is my child, why can't I take him with me? That's enough. I suddenly stood up and interrupted my mother, looking coldly at my father. Who do you think you are? What makes you think you can tell us what to do? I'll tell you, I don't need your help at all. I'll work hard with my mother, and our lives will be much better than yours. My father froze, clearly not expecting me to say that. He opened his mouth to say something, but in the end he said nothing, just angrily slammed the door and left. Looking at his back, I felt nothing, just indifference. Mum looked at me worriedly and asked, "Are you sure about this?" I turned to her and looked her firmly in the eye and said, "Mum, trust me, we can do it." I knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but I would not be weak like I had been before. I wanted to protect Mum and give her a happy life. I wanted the person who had abandoned us to pay for his actions. I took Mum's hand and walked out of the mansion that had once been full of laughter and joy, but now was only cold and calculating. The sun was shining on us, and I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of freedom and hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was only the beginning. After leaving the mansion, I didn't take my mother to look for a rental apartment right away, but went directly to the law firm. In my previous life, my father used loopholes in the law to take away my rights and those of my mother. This time, I would never let him get away with it. "Hello, how can I help you?" A young female lawyer greeted us. I took a deep breath to calm myself down as much as possible, and then told her everything that had happened to me and my mother, as well as the fact that my father might have messed with the family assets. The lawyer frowned after listening, and then asked, "Young man, do you have any evidence for what you're saying?" I said, "Not yet, but I remember that my father owned a lot of real estate." I took out a piece of paper and wrote down all those properties according to my memories from my previous life, which numbered about 5. However, Aaron had sold some of the properties to his brother at a low price and signed a false contract, so in reality that part of the property was still his. Aaron also forged some fake investment projects, saying that his investment had failed, which caused the family's assets to shrink, and he wanted to reduce the proportion of the property split. However, this time, because of my insistence, my mother hired the most professional divorce lawyer in the city and finally got back the property she was entitled to. Finally, my mother and I breathed a sigh of relief that we no longer had to live without a place to live and without money. Next, we need to figure out how to live together. In my previous life, my father groomed me to become a beauty blogger in order to promote his cosmetics company. Although I later suffered facial injuries due to the poor quality of the cosmetics, I did learn a lot of makeup and styling techniques. However, after being reborn, I am only 10 years old, which is not the right age to become a beauty blogger again. So, I plan to focus on my mother. She is 35 years old and has been a stay-at-home mom, so she is used to not wearing makeup. I think if my divorced mom learns to put on makeup and looks prettier, it will not only help her, but also be a great publicity point. So I plan to register a social media account and make short videos with my mom, teaching her makeup and skincare. In this way, we can help mothers like her, who are around 35 years old, and women who feel lost in life, to regain their confidence. "Mom, do you want to look better?" I asked my mom excitedly, "My child, why are you suddenly saying such things? Mom is so old, who is she dressing up for?" My mother laughed and gave me a little tap on the forehead, but there was a hint of helplessness in her face. I knew that over the years, she had followed my father's lead and felt her status in the family decline, to the point where she had almost forgotten that she had once been a fashionable lady. "Of course you do. Of course you have to dress up for yourself. Imagine, when you become radiant and beautiful, the number of people looking back at you on the street will be high. And if you start taking care of yourself now, you will be 16 years younger than your peers in the future. Just imagine, when that time comes and someone asks you how old you are, you can proudly say, I'm 38 years old. As I spoke, I gestured with my hands, which made my mother laugh. She said with a smile, you're a kid, you really know how to do things. I could tell that my suggestion made her very happy. So I took action right away, using my saved pocket money to buy a second-hand device, and I also registered for a short video account on my mobile phone, naming it A Divorced Mother Regains Confidence. At first, my mother was a little nervous and always seemed a bit constrained when facing the camera. I encouraged her, saying, Mom, just think you're talking to yourself in the mirror and say whatever you want. With my encouragement, my mother gradually relaxed and began to share her experiences and feelings. She said, Hello everyone, I'm Maddie's mother, I'm 38 years old. Many people say that women go downhill after 38, but I don't think so. While adjusting the lighting and filming angle, I listened to my mother's words and felt a special warmth in my heart. During this time, we have learned to put on makeup and match clothes together, and we have also made short videos together. Although it is a bit tiring, we are very happy. The number of followers on our video account is slowly increasing, from a few at the beginning to several hundred now. Although it is not much, it is already very encouraging to us. I know that our current path may not be very smooth, but I believe that as long as we, mother and daughter, work together, we will be able to overcome difficulties and create a bright future. Mom, don't worry, the number of views of our videos will definitely keep going up. I reassured my slightly nervous mother while adjusting the phone holder. Since we made that video about a 38-year-old mother's transformation, there hasn't been much progress with the account. The number of followers has remained at a few hundred, and the number of likes and comments is pitifully low. Sigh, is it because I haven't done a good enough job, Maddie? Maybe we should just give up. Mom seems to have a few more fine lines around the eyes, and her tone of voice sounds very lost. I know that Mom has really worked hard on the video. Every night she practices her makeup in the mirror and secretly stays up late studying how to match clothes. It makes me feel bad to see her work so hard. How could it be your problem? You look so beautiful now, let's go out and ask people. I took Mom's shoulders and made her turn around in front of the phone screen. Oh, you're such a kidder. Mom laughed at me, her eyes full of tenderness. Seeing my mother smile, I silently decided in my heart that, with my experience from my previous life, I could definitely make a hit of a short video. I recently have been updating my short video account and also paying attention to the trends in the market. My efforts have paid off, and I finally have a discovery. I found that there are currently parent-child outfits on the market, but most of the designs are rather old-fashioned and the color combinations are not very good-looking. I suddenly thought, why not use my previous design concepts and try to design some parent-child outfits that are both fashionable and practical. I told my mother about this idea, and she immediately supported me. Great. My mother trusts my judgment, so let's make parent-child outfits. I pulled out the clothing design materials I had collected before, combined them with current fashion trends, and quickly designed several fashionable and comfortable parent-child outfits. To save money, we decided to buy the fabric ourselves and make the sample outfits by hand. During the day, my mother and I went to the clothing wholesale market to choose the fabric, visiting shop after shop to compare prices and quality. At night, we sewed the clothes together, stitch by stitch, in the dim light of our rented room. Although the process was very hard, we both enjoyed it, because we both shared the same dream. Mom, look, the pattern on this skirt matches the pattern on your shirt, doesn't it? I asked my mother excitedly, holding the little skirt I had just made. Oh, really? Maddie, you're so clever, so smart. My mother looked at me with eyes full of relief and pride. Seeing the smile on my mother's face after so long, I felt full of energy. I knew I had to make my mother's life better. So I contacted a photographer friend I had worked with before and asked him to help take some promotional photos and videos of our matching outfits. After hearing our story, my friend was very moved and volunteered to take the photos for us for free. On the day of the shoot, my mother and I put on the matching outfits we had made and struck a variety of poses in front of the camera. The sun shone on us, and it felt like we were surrounded by a golden aura. I felt so happy and content at that moment. The photos and video were ready quickly, and I quickly uploaded them to the short video platform. This time I deliberately chose to post them in the evening when everyone is most active, and added specially edited text and background music. As soon as the video was posted, it immediately attracted the attention of many netizens. Wow, this mother and daughter really look elegant. Their clothes are so beautiful, where can I buy them? This is really touching, this mother and daughter are awesome. Likes and comments immediately increased, and so did the number of followers. I watched the data in the background while nervously watching my mother's reaction. I saw her staring at the screen of her phone, her expression changing from surprise to delight, and finally to happiness. My mother excitedly said to me, "Maddie, my dear daughter, we've really made it." She hugged me, her eyes brimming with tears. I hugged her back, feeling her warmth and excitement, and my heart filled with joy and emotion. I knew that this was just the beginning. We were still in a state of joy when suddenly we received a private message. The sender was an unfamiliar number, and the content was very simple, asking if I was interested in taking my parent-child brand to the next level. If I was willing, I could go to Cafe XX at 10 a.m. the next morning to talk about it in detail. I suddenly felt a little nervous. Had a clothing company taken a fancy to our designs? But I quickly dismissed this thought. We were just a small, relatively unknown brand, so how could we attract the attention of a big company? My intuition told me that this private message was not simple, and seemed to be deliberately arousing my curiosity. It was impossible to say that I wasn't curious about the person behind it. I really wanted to know who was playing the mysterious game. The next day, I got up early, deliberately chose a set of the latest parent-child clothes I designed, and helped my mother apply light makeup. "Mom, today we're going to meet that mysterious person together." I put my arm around my mother's shoulder, with a little mischievous smile on my face. The cafe was very crowded, and I found the target according to the table number in the private message. A middle-aged man was sitting there. He was a bit overweight, his greasy hair was neatly combed, and he was wearing gold chains, watches and rings, looking like a nouveau riche. When he saw my mother and me, he gave a smile that he thought was friendly, which immediately reminded me of all those partners who had bad intentions towards my mother in the past. He spoke while taking out a business card and asked if I was the owner of XX Clothing Factory. I sneered and asked him directly, "What do you want with us?" He waved his hands in a hurry, his eyes darting back and forth between us, and said, "Don't worry, I've watched your video, the design is quite good, very creative. I'm in the clothing business, I have a few good brands, are you interested in buying our designs?" I interrupted him and said, "Young lady, you're wrong." He pretended to be very concerned. "What kind of big development can a small workshop like yours have?" He also said that if we followed him, he guaranteed that we would live very well. I almost laughed out loud, as this sounded similar to all the lies I had heard before. I asked him calmly, "So how do you plan to cooperate?" He was very direct, sticking out a fat finger. "I will buy your designs and give you a sum of money, and you won't have to worry about anything in the future." "How much?" I asked him. He held up 3 fingers and a smug look came over his face. 3,000? I pretended to be surprised. He laughed, as if he had heard something really funny, and said, "You really know how to cheer people up, young lady. It's 30,000. Doesn't that sound good?" I put my coffee cup down and made a soft noise to interrupt his boasting. I looked at him coldly and said in a flat tone, you think our design is worth 30,000? His face immediately paled, and he was clearly taken aback by my decisive rejection. I told him straight away that I would never sell it for 300,000. Then I stood up, took my mother by the hand and said, "Let's go, and don't bother us again." "Hey, wait, we can negotiate the price." He hurried after us, but I gave him a look that stopped him in his tracks. Outside the cafe, I took a deep breath, my heart filled with disdain and anger. I've seen so many people try to steal other people's ideas. "Maddie, what should we do now?" Mom asked, looking worried. I took her hand and said firmly, "Mum, don't worry, I've got an idea." I knew that the Real challenge was still ahead. My matching parent-child outfits had attracted the attention of some people, and they were probably connected to my father. I had a feeling that he was involved. In a previous life, he had liked to engage in these kinds of shenanigans, taking other people's designs and then brazenly putting his own factory label on them. "Maddie, what are you thinking about?" My mother nudged me gently when she saw me daydreaming. "Nothing," I said, barely smiling, as I came back to my senses, and said, "Mom, let's go home." Once we got home, I immediately turned on the computer and started looking up information about the XX clothing factory. Sure enough, that factory was one of my father's businesses, and the greasy middle-aged man was actually my father's right-hand man. Everyone called him a brownnoser. I didn't expect to run into him here. I sneered a little. It seems that this time I can't avoid the battle between my father and me. Over the next few days, my mother and I continued to make videos and update the shop. Unexpectedly, our videos became an instant hit. The number of views and followers quickly increased, and so did the number of orders. Looking at the pile of orders, my mother asked nervously, "Maddie, should we hire someone?" I nodded, thinking it was time to expand the business. So, I contacted the photographer and editor I had worked with before, hoping they would become our long-term partners. I rented a bigger studio, bought new equipment, and hired new people. Our parent-child clothing brand finally started to get some attention online. I named the brand Reborn, which means rebirth and also represents a new beginning for my mother and me. However, after the brand became popular, some bad comments started to appear online. Some people said that we were plagiarizing, that they thought our clothes were exactly the same as a certain brand's style, and accused us of saying that we were original when we were actually imitating. Support originality and oppose plagiarism. I looked at the homepages of the people who had left those comments and found that they were all newly registered accounts. It was obvious that someone had deliberately hired online trolls to smear us. I was so angry that I slammed my hand down on the table, wondering who was behind this. The first person I thought of was my father. He had always kept an eye on my designs, and now that he saw how well Reborn was doing, he must be very envious, so he used this kind of low-level tactic against us. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. The most important thing now is to find evidence and expose the mastermind behind this. I began to carefully analyze the negative comments, hoping to find some clues. Suddenly, I saw a comment mentioning a place called XX Design Studio. XX Design Studio? I immediately searched online. It turned out that the studio was owned by my father and specialized in designing for his clothing factory. I understand now, it really seems to be my father behind this. Since he liked to play dirty, I won't hold back either. I immediately contacted my lawyer friend and planned to collect evidence to sue XX Design Studio and my father's clothing factory for plagiarism. I wanted to show them that there is a price to pay for stealing someone else's ideas. Just as I was preparing to take action, my phone suddenly rang. I picked up the phone and saw that an unfamiliar number was displayed on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, but then I answered the phone. "Hello, who is this?" A deep male voice came from the other end of the line. It was cold and slightly warning-like, and it said, "You'd better not do anything stupid, or else." He paused deliberately, leaving me hanging. I clutched the phone tightly, my heart pounding. Who was this man? How did he know about my plan? Had someone leaked the information? There was silence on the other end of the line for a while, and then a low laugh came, which felt like it was coming from the depths of an abyss and made me feel a little scared. Haha, so you are still a little clever. Did you really think you could go against your father? He is no ordinary person. I interrupted him with a sneer. Let me tell you, in the past I might have been afraid of him, but now I won't let him lead me by the nose anymore. Hearing this, the man on the other end seemed very angry and his tone became even more fierce. What a pain in the neck. Since you are so disrespectful, I will not be polite either. After saying this, he hung up the phone directly. I held the phone in my hand, my palms were sweating. The matter of the mole has not been resolved, and now there is a mysterious person threatening me. It seems that I am really in big trouble this time. I fidgeted, scratching my hair, trying to calm myself down. The most important thing now is to stay calm. I have to find out who this man is and what he really wants. I called my lawyer friend again and told him what had happened. The lawyer told me that he had checked the number I mentioned and found that it was a virtual number, so no information could be found. Hearing this, his tone also became serious, and it was obvious that the other party had been prepared. What should I do now? I was a little panicked, feeling like I was being led by an invisible hand, with no idea what would happen next. Don't worry, I will do my best to keep you safe. My lawyer friend reassured me, saying that there was nothing to do for now, just wait for his news. After hanging up the phone, my mood became even heavier. A fear that I had never felt before suddenly arose in my heart, making me feel very uncomfortable. Am I really going to lose? Am I really no match for that cunning father? No, I don't want this. I clenched my fists, my eyes full of firm resolve. I will never give up easily. In the following days, I was like a frightened bird, always on edge, always watching my surroundings. I didn't dare go out, I didn't dare answer the phone to strangers, and I even found it hard to trust the people around me. I locked myself in my room and read those negative comments over and over again, hoping to find some new clues. Suddenly, I noticed that the IP address of one of the comments was actually my home. My heart suddenly became nervous, and a horrible thought popped into my head. Could it be that the insider is in my home? I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. I couldn't act rashly. I had to find evidence first, before I could expose the identity of the mole. I began to quietly observe everyone in the family, paying attention to their behavior. In the end, I suspected the nanny, Auntie Zhang. She was usually very nice to me, but recently I noticed that she often made secret phone calls and looked very nervous. Once, I accidentally heard her talking about me on the phone with someone else and realized that she was talking about me collecting evidence and planning to expose my father. At that moment, I realized that Auntie Zhang had been sent by my father to spy on me. In order to make her reveal her true identity, I deliberately spread some false information. Sure enough, Auntie Zhang believed it and told my father the false information. I secretly collected evidence of Auntie Zhang's contact with the outside world, and then one night, in front of the whole family, I revealed her true identity. My father didn't expect that his plan was so thorough, but I still found out. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, he had no way to defend himself and finally had to admit his mistake. I felt nothing but sadness as I watched my father being taken away by the police. I walked over to my mother, hugged her tightly and whispered, "Mom, it's all over now, and we can live a peaceful life." My mother couldn't stop her tears, but a smile of relief appeared on her face. I understood then that my life had just begun, and there were so many possibilities waiting for me in the future. I will work hard to create a bright future for my mother and me.